Her last words were, "I love you," and I will be forever grateful for that.
1 year ago today, Mindi Bischoff received the worst call of her life.
I just kept thinking, this can't be real.
Her daughter Abbi, who had just celebrated her 20th birthday, was gone. And Abby's best friend, Skye Hackman,
I don't actually remember a ton of it.
was fighting for her life in a hospital room across the country.
And I thought, if I close my eyes, I'll wake up from this dream.
My house is cozy.
To say Abbi loved life is an understatement. The Madison High School grad made friends wherever she went. Her nieces and nephews adored her, and she had just been accepted into the Pensacola State Cosmetology program in Florida.
I just remember telling my kids, she is so happy.
Abbi and Skye met playing softball in high school and worked and lived together in West Yellowstone over the summer. Last August, Abbi asked Skye if she'd help her move from Idaho to Florida, and they planned an unforgettable road trip.
And she wanted to be in Nashville, waking up there on her birthday. We pulled into Nashville at 12:18 a.m.
They made their way to the Sunshine State and spent several days on the beach eating Abby's favorite nothing bundt cake and exploring her new home.
She also had a sister in her family that lived there, and so she was excited to be there.
After a few days, Skye was set to return home to her husband in Idaho. Before they left for the airport, Abbi called her mom.
She said, "Mom, I'm so excited. I have so many things to tell you that as soon as I drop Skye off, we can talk while I'm driving back."
And we were kind of just talking, and she said, "I really hate goodbyes, but this isn't a goodbye. You'll feel me." I remember walking my suitcase out to the car, and that's the last thing I remember.
Abbi was driving her car. Skye was in the passenger seat. A few minutes into their drive, they stopped at a red light when out of nowhere, a Jeep slammed into them. This diagram from the Florida Highway Patrol shows what happened. Abbi and Skye were in vehicle number 2. The driver of the Jeep, number 1, not only hit the young women, but caused a chain reaction crash with 4 other vehicles. The speed limit on the road is 45 miles an hour. The crash report shows the driver of the Jeep, a 76-year-old woman, was going 60 miles an hour and was, quote, inattentive.
And at 12:03, the alert pops up on my phone. A crash had been detected on Abby's car. I immediately called her, and there was no answer.
So I had been thrown into Abby's seat, and my head was pinned between her back and her seat, and I was down by the bottom of her seat.
Mindi and her 5 other children were frantically communicating, and those in Idaho met up at her son's house in Idaho Falls. Casey, her son-in-law in Florida, rushed to the scene of the crash.
He went to someone and he said, "That's my sister's car."
Casey was told the victims had been taken to 3 hospitals. He went to be with Skye, hoping Abbi was there too, while Mindi and other family members contacted other hospitals.
We kept calling and calling. "No, we don't have an Abigail Bischoff." And it was at that point, about 3 o'clock that day, that I started to think, I wonder.
Skye was in horrible shape. She had 2 brain bleeds, both collarbones, and 8 ribs were broken, along with part of her back, left shoulder blade, both lungs punctured, cuts everywhere, and glass embedded in her skin. Meanwhile, back in Idaho, after painfully waiting hours for any information, Mindi finally received a call.
It's the strangest moment when they say, "I'm Corporal so-and-so from the Florida State Highway Police. There's no easy way to tell you this, but your daughter didn't make it." And I can't explain what that feels like. It was like my whole chest felt like it was caving in, and I truly couldn't breathe.
You want to see something so beautiful?
Abbi was declared dead at 12:20 p.m., and Skye was clinging to life. Both of their families immediately flew to Florida, and when they landed, Mindi went to Skye's hospital room.
The look on her face, it was like anguish.
And I remember I had just woken up, so I was a little bit out of it. And they said Abbi didn't make it. And I remember just crying, and then I fell asleep. I don't remember anything after that.
The crash happened on a Monday, and Abby's family decided to hold her funeral on Saturday in Idaho. Skye was determined to be there, but there was no way she could fly with brain bleeds and punctured lungs. Plus, doctors weren't sure she'd even be able to leave the hospital. But miraculously, she was released Thursday night, and her husband and mom drove straight from Florida to Idaho, arriving 3 hours before Abby's services were set to begin.
Cried the whole way home.
But you wanted to be there.
Yeah.
The funeral was on Mindi's birthday. So many people came, including a woman who had made bracelets for Abbi and Skye months before the tragedy. They didn't have clasps and were meant to be worn forever. Somehow Abbi's came off in the crash, and Skye's was cut off at the hospital. So the kind woman visited the funeral, put one on Abbi's wrist, and gave one to Skye.
She was walking out the door and she stopped and she turned back. She goes, "Would you like one of these?" And immediately it was like I could hear Abbi's voice, and she said, "Mom, it's your birthday." And I had actually forgotten it was my birthday.
After the funeral, Skye and Abbi's families began to learn more about what happened. Mindi met with a Florida Highway Patrol investigator who told her there had been reports of an erratic driver several minutes before the crash.
She told us that the lady that had been driving, her husband told her that she had dementia, but she seemed fine. And that was like a punch in the stomach, going, you knew, and she should not have been driving.
I started to get angry. I was angry at her husband for not taking the keys because this was very preventable.
Mindi also learned the driver had a minimal car insurance policy that only paid up to $10,000 per victim, with $20,000 being the maximum payout per incident, meaning $20,000 was split up among the 9 people in the 5 vehicles that were hit.
Do you know how much your medical bills were?
Yeah, I'm at about $400,000 right now.
And how much did you get from the crash, from the insurance company?
$1,900.
You have $400,000 in medical bills and you received $1,900 from the insurance company.
Yeah.
Mindi waited to learn if charges would be filed against the driver who caused the crash. She was told there would be an update in February, but nothing. Finally, last month, she met with investigators once again.
You're still like, what's going on? And they said the attorney's not going to press charges.
Right.
And just ruled it an accident.
Mm-hmm. She kept referring to it as, well, you know, when she had her medical event, and I finally just said, would you please stop calling it a medical event? I said, dementia's not an event. I said, it's a life.
EastIdahoNews.com contacted the Florida Highway Patrol with questions about this case, but a spokesperson referred us to the crash report. According to court records, the driver has never been charged in connection to the crash, and both Skye and Mindi tell me that driver has never contacted their families.
We found out that this woman had been in the same hospital as Skye the day of the accident, but there has been nothing.
I do not want a penny from it. I don't care for it. I'll pay the bills. To get an I'm sorry, or my wife shouldn't have been driving, anything would be okay, done.
Drivers with dementia are 3 times more likely to become involved in traffic accidents, according to the Alzheimer's Association. Some states require those who have been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's to take a driving test, but Mindi believes more needs to be done.
That accident was 1,000% preventable. I would love to see legislation that required doctors to report dementia to the DMV.
Mindi and Skye would also like insurance companies to pay for driving services for people with dementia or Alzheimer's. Another important point, they want people to have that critical conversation with aging loved ones about when it's time to put away the car keys.
Decide with your parents before they get to that point where they're going to fight you on it.
Abbi was buried in the Annis Butte Cemetery. Skye drives by every day, but Mindi moved to Texas shortly after Abbi died. Just weeks ago, her daughter's gravestone was finally finished. Mindi has never seen it until now.
I miss her so much. She was too young.
What do you think of the stone?
It turned out so beautiful. You know, she always stood out. And so, as we look around and there's so many of the gray headstones, this one stands out.
It does stand out.
Abbi loved sunsets, constantly sent her mom and friends photos of sunsets wherever she was. And although the sun set way too early on her life, Skye and Mindi hope there is some purpose in it.
If her accident can bring any kind of change to helping people make better decisions with their aging loved ones, then her life was worth every minute of the 20 years that she was here. And it's all okay.
I'm Nate Eaton, EastIdahoNews.com. I'm Nate Eaton, EastIdahoNews.com.